Okay, everybody, it's Sean here from Micro Budget Film Lab, and I'm super excited today that Antonio Pantoja is joining me to talk about his film that we did some script development work on through the Launchpad program at Micro Budget Film Lab, but that he's now run with and has shot the movie and is in the editing process. And so I'm really excited to hear how it's gone since I first read the script, the development process, and anything, all the other elements. So, without further ado, thank you, Antonio, for taking the time for talk to me today.
Are you kidding me? Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show, your podcast. I can't believe it. I've been such a fan of yours for so long, and so many of my friends know you. I'm just lucky to be here, and it's an honor to even talk to you, man. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh wow, well thanks. So, I mean, the place to start off is, the scripts came to the program. You had already done a lot of work on it. It was really, along the development path. But how long have you been nursing this project? Which I should say that the title of the movie is One Must Fall.
Oh,
Uh, and so, how long were you in development?
ooh, um, before your script development program, just a little bit, not super long, so just a couple of months before that, but it was just mostly a concept. I had read a bunch of script writing books and well, I say read. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So like when I'm driving in the car, or I'm driving to a shoot or something like that. Um, but to be honest, they just really weren't hitting the mark or making sense. And I feel like you almost have to. I don't know. You almost have to have somebody guide you through the process. I think the script writing process is very different, and I'm the type of learner who can't really learn audibly, like by somebody just by listening to it or reading to it, reading it. But when I finally started the development process and I found you and your program, it helped immensely because you lay out a full blueprint for it which was extremely unique as far as from an educational perspective. I had never come across anything like that yet.
And so, why did you pick horror? What attracted you to that? Because it's sorry, we should talk a little bit about what the movie's about, right? Maybe give a
Yeah.
little
Oh
give a
yeah.
little blurb. Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about the movie and where it came from. And
Yeah. So the movie is it is horror. It's almost not even horror anymore. So what it evolved into was it's almost like a drama with a lot of comedy elements, and horror is definitely in there, and gore is in there, and all that stuff if people are looking for it. But there's some really heavy topics in there, almost like a what would you do if you were in this situation. But the movie is about a girl who was sexually harassed by her boss, and he's he's a piece of work. He's very chauvinistic, and um, and he fires her wrongfully, so she has to pick up an actual job. I'm sorry, to afford her bills for her son, and her and her friend are fired. So they get on a job on a crime scene cleanup crew where they clean up murders and suicides. And she's curious, there's a murderer on the loose killing all these people. They're cleaning up the murders. Is the killer still on the loose? Like, have they apprehended him? So, which is a question that most normal people might ask in that situation, or not. But so she poses that question, and the killer is still in there with them, because sometimes these murders happen in these huge factories or warehouses that are 50,000 square feet, where somebody could definitely be hiding, in there. So she poses that question, and it raises some pretty cool, it takes her down some pretty cool paths in the storyline.
and what inspired you to approach this particular story?
That's a really good question. So, I guess when like I mean, you always see some people in hazmat suits on, on after a murder's happened, like a homicide, like a cleanup crew. That's actual somebody's job, and I think I saw somebody on Facebook post about it several years ago that they were actually looking into doing that job. So I really thought it was really interesting that that's something that people actually have to do, and we don't really think about it that much. It's not really top of mind, but yeah, so that's an actual job that people do. So I found it really interesting. So I started researching it and finding anything online that I possibly could about it, and seeing any horror stories and stuff like that. But I was actively pursuing, like, trying to proactively find a concept for a horror film, and I just basically took your advice. I've been listening to you for a long time and reading your stuff, and Robert Rodriguez and Lloyd Kaufman and all you guys. There was this common denominator that said, if you're gonna, do a horror film, you really don't need like a big name to sell the film. People will watch it mostly based on the concept. Whereas if you're going to do an action film or a comedy, people specifically go to those type of films for the lead actor. Like, oh, it's a Bruce Willis movie. Oh, it's a Liam Neeson movie, or Jason Statham. It's going to be a great action film. Or, oh, it's a Will Ferrell movie. That's going to be a great comedy film, probably. Where the concept is not as high on the priority list for the audience. But horror, they'll give it a chance without a name and loosely based on the concept.
Mm-hmm. And this was your first feature film, right?
Yes, this was actually my first feature film, and ironically, I haven't used Skype many times. So it's like my second time using it, and ironically, I was going to get on that show, Rebel Without a Crew, that Robert Rodriguez had put together, and I made it to the final casting process, and it was actually like 15 or 20 interviews or something like that. And I was actually going to have them follow me through the process of making the feature. They had a reality show, and 5 filmmakers are on there that made their first feature. But it just didn't work out contractually, and I already had a lot of obligations in October because, I signed contracts also for shoots that I do because I do video, for a living. So yeah, I actually was going to do it on that show, which would have been super cool.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of videos do you do for a living?
I do everything. I do commercial production. I do a bunch of music videos. I do weddings still. I love doing weddings. I know a lot of people hate them, but but I do them and I love them. And yeah, just pretty much anything. I'm pretty much a diva too about like the selective process. And then I shoot photos, editorial, for a bunch of magazines, and I do fine art that most people probably wouldn't like. But I do fine art also, and conceptual photography as well.
Oh wow, that's great. And so did you find that stuff that all the other areas that you're doing professionally and also doing in terms of your passion, did you find that you were able to utilize that stuff and bring it into making One Must Fall?
I think so. To be honest, the script writing process was extremely difficult, probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. And I think nothing can fully prepare you for that until you do some sort of workshop or something that whatever it is that is your button that can allow you to learn and take in the knowledge, because we all learn differently. Yours just hit the mark for me, and I think it's because you do that as your day job. That's what you do. That's what you do, and you do films. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people who were putting out books and workshops and stuff like that, if you actually research those people, they don't really do that for a living, or they're not really writing scripts for movies, or they're not, so yours really hit the mark for me because you're in the trenches with us. You're doing films as well. So yeah, it helped dramatically. But what I do on a daily basis for music videos and stuff like that did help. I write a lot of treatments for musicians and stuff. I've worked with a ton of musicians, and now I'm to the point where they come to me specific. I guess I've got like a niche for music videos, and they come to me specifically for like writing a skit before their music video actually takes place. So I write like something creative or funny. I'm not really a funny guy, but like for whatever reason with music videos, they always have me write these comedy skits, and it's really taken off like in the underground kind of in the realm. So I've worked with a bunch of artists like Bubba Sparks. I grew up loving this guy, and now I'm like working with him and shot his album cover and stuff, and
Wow.
Tech Nine and Dusty Lee's one of my best friends now, and it's just crazy. All these guys I grew up idolizing, and I'm fans of them. Now I'm working with them and getting to write scripts for them, which is super cool. So that did help me somewhat, but like I said, it wasn't until read a lot of books. It wasn't until your workshop, your course, that it actually started clicking with me. The story elements actually came together, and the hero's journey actually resonated with me. Because, like I said, man, I've read a million books. Well, I've listened to a million audio books, but didn't really hit the mark.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your about the production process itself. So you shot it as a micro budget, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering what kind of things you did to make it possible. I mean, I've seen the teaser trailer. I know it's not out yet, but like it looks like high production value. There's some really nice, dynamic shots in there. how did you? I mean, before we even get to the logistics of like how you got the warehouse space and stuff, like how did you organize your production in order to be able to do something that looked so nice on
Oh man,
very little money?
that's so kind of you. You know, I'm a video guy, so I've been working in the industry for a long time, and I think almost 10 years now, just, you know, doing random video projects. And at first it was passion. But what happened was it allowed me to save up all my gear because I just buy gear. Like I probably shouldn't, but I don't really have a life, so so I don't like blow on clothes or like drinks or going out to eat or anything like that. You know, I'm just a dad, so like I just spend my money on video gear if I have, you know, money. So you know, I own all of the gear, so I own all the lights and I own a red Epic, and it took me a long time to get that one, but that was a dream for a long time. So and it's a lot to spend on a camera, but I bought that, and then I really wanted the '80s aesthetic from a, you know, and I wanted the film to look like an '80s film because it's set in the '80s, and the only way to make a slasher film work these days is to get rid of cell phones in some way. And you know, you see in a lot of modern slashers where they're like, "Oh, we just got no coverage." It
Yeah.
doesn't work. You know, like that. I don't know. Like that doesn't work. It doesn't put me in that world really, where I'm like, "Come on, man! Like you can't not have coverage ever." So you know, it's one of those things. So I've been saving up for gear for a long time, and I got all the gear together, and then I actually wanted to DP it myself, but you know, listening to your advice, a lot of others, a lot of people swayed me away from that, and they, you know, told me to focus on just, you know, if I can just focus on directing, which I've never done before. I'm usually a one man band for all my projects, and that goes for audio and everything. But I had an audio guy. I did get a DP, Cody Dingfield, who was awesome. But yeah, man, and then a gaffer, Nate Spicer, who was amazing. But our crew was actually pretty big, considering our budget. But I think, you know, like I paid to do this film, you know, so I didn't pay myself, of course, just like most of us who are doing micro budget films. So I think that saved a lot, and gave me the leverage to pay other people to do those roles, which was great. So since I own the gear, and since I am not paying myself to direct, produce everything, it freed up a lot of the funds to you know, to get to the people who do their job well. Mm-hmm. So I think all of it counts for production value. Like you can go buy a red Epic, you'll probably get, you know, without the right lights and stuff, the right production value, the right art direction, you could just get like a Canon T2i and save a ton of money, and you know, then spend the rest of that on art direction. But without like the whole package, with art direction, lighting, you know, great location, and a good camera, lenses, then it's not all going to come together. But I think a lot of people think that, you know, buying a great camera is just going to be an instant remedy for like a cinematic quality, but that's not really the case. There's so many other factors involved, you know, with that. But with One Must Fall, it's what I sent you was not color graded or anything like that yet, and I have a great colorist, Simone Chirisi, who's gonna take a look at that as soon as the edit's finished. But yeah, man, it's everything, and I worked on it for, you know, like the last 10 years, just doing odd jobs, random jobs. Sometimes doing music videos for songs I really don't like, you know, and things like try to make the best of it. But I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and I knew that one day, you know, I'm doing all this for a reason, even if I, you know, don't necessarily agree with the shoot that I'm doing. I'm doing this for my feature film, you know, and I think that level of sacrifice is so important. So when it came time to do the feature, I sold my car. I was like, selling my car. You know, I'll sell anything. I'm willing to sacrifice anything to make this work. So I pretty much sold my car and bought the Epic. It was like I still had to pay like a little more for the Epic. but like I think, you know, when it comes down to it, it's all about what you're willing to sacrifice to get that stuff. And I see a lot of filmmakers out there who are like, oh, I could never afford this or that. And you go to their Facebook and they're posting pictures of like them out every weekend or something. And you're like, how bad do you really want it though? Like, wouldn't you just like stayed in for like 10 weekends or something like that and saved like $3 or $4 grand? Mm-hmm. You know, how bad do you really want it? And I think that a lot of people are really in love with like the reception of it. Like, where people are like, oh, Antonio, it's such a great job. Antonio, you did such a good job. It's so beautiful, or something like that. But they're not really in love with the grind.
Mm-hmm.
And I think falling in love with the grind is more important than falling in love with the reception. So if you love what you're like, I love being hung up on and finding locations and running around the city getting props, 80s props, and harassing people on Facebook for other props and locations and stuff. I love all that stuff. I love getting rejected. And I think if you're not in love with that stuff and you're in love with the reception, then you're not like a filmmaker. You're just like a person who's in love with the celebration,
Yeah. And now, how did you? Just have some sort of technical questions, because I'm a nerd for like how people solve problems, and let's talk about the warehouse first. I mean, most of the story takes place in a giant warehouse space. It's almost a single location film. I mean, there's sort of a bookend of like them before they get there, and then them at the end. But most of it's inside that warehouse space. And I really want to see it, how it looks in all its glory. But I'm wondering, how did you get that? How did you get an empty space that you could play with in the way that the script required?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think just from a networking perspective, you come across people all the time, like, people like, oh, you're in film. Check this out. I have this. That probably happens to you all the time. On Facebook, I have pretty good engagement, so I never get out. I probably should more. I should go to more like networking events and stuff like that. But on Facebook, people will hit me and be like, hey, I've got this thing that you might need one day. And I always take that stuff very seriously, and I never write it off, or even if sometimes I get ridiculous requests or things that people offer up, I never write them off or act like that's ridiculous. I'm like, that's pretty cool. They know I'm weird, so I'll write it down and maybe I'll check it out. Well, a friend of mine, Lindsay Morman, who ended up being one of the art directors on the film, she was like, hey, I've got this gigantic warehouse. You might want to take a look at it. I know you like horror a lot. You could probably do a really cool horror film here. So I went there, and this is way before I had written anything. So I went there and I looked at everything that it had in it already. And this is just based on like your advice and a bunch of my other friends like Jason Buff and Alex Ferrari and these guys. And they basically just said, write it based on what you got. And so I took that very literally. So I went there and I'm like, okay, there's a bed here. I'm going to write that into the script. And there's this here and this room. And I'm going to write that into the script. I'll take this into consideration. And then I just basically went there and I did like 2 walkthroughs of the place. And yeah, man, I wrote it based on what I had, just like you told me, man. I mean, like, now you're doing like this. I can't remember exactly what the group is called. It's One Room
Wonders, yeah.
One Room Wonder. So like, I think that's amazing. That's such an amazing idea, and that's kind of like the Blumhouse model now. Is like, he's like, you can have either like a couple special effects, or but you're gonna have to be limited to one room, and they're doing it on very low budget, and they're making these amazing films because what happens is it causes you to be extremely. You have to use your imagination a lot when you're doing something like that, and I saw a few films that were like that, and you're like, how is this film going to be any good if it's just all in one? There's no way. But some of the best stuff I have seen lately, you can tell now. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell before as a viewer that they had very limited resources. Like, I saw a movie called Cheap Thrills recently, and it had a couple stars in it. It was like a dark comedy, a black comedy they call it. But basically, it all takes place like in a house pretty much, and there's like a bar scene, but it's not a huge portion of the movie at all, and it was absolutely brilliant. It's on Netflix, and it was just brilliant. I mean, it was so strategic the way that they exhausted this one resource they had. It's like 4 people in a room, that's it. And then one of the actors who was in my film, Daniel DeWeldon, he was in a film called Anonymous 616, and there's only 4 actors in it. They're in a house. And they did it very strategically, and it's so well written, it's so eloquent, it's so good. And I think that what happens when you're limited to such a refined small space, that you have to just use your imagination, and cream will always rise to the top, and the good writing will always be amazing. And not saying that mine is at all. Anonymous 616 was awesome. Cheap Thrills was awesome. I tried my best, but yeah, we exhausted the one resource that I knew I had access to, and then I've shot a music video in an office space before. So I was like, well, that's definitely going in the film because I have an idea for that as well. Mm-hmm. And so We used the office space, which was amazing, beautiful, and they set dressed it, and it was even better. But yeah, man. So I just used the resources that I had and exhausted those as much as humanly possible, and it really worked out.
And how many days did you shoot for?
It's a little ridiculous, but I shot for 11 days total. I probably should have shot for about 20 maybe or more, but I shot 11 days consecutive, which I would not recommend doing.
Yeah, I did. Sorry, our first one was 12 days consecutively, and yeah.
And like we're down to work like 18 hours. Like this is our baby, I'm down to be there the whole entire time for 18, 20 an hour, whatever. But you can't do that to your cast and crew, man. So like even if you're down, like you have to stagger them. So like if you're down and you're shooting it and all that stuff, or like give them a break, man, because that's rough on them. So we try to stagger them the best as humanly possible that we could. But it's really tough. I mean, when you're working on limited budget and stuff, and food is so expensive, and just everything's so expensive that you're doing, stay in that writing process as long as humanly possible. I'd say to up and coming filmmakers, because that's like the only thing that you can do that's free.
Yeah, yeah.
Everything else. So like stay in that writing process, refine that as much as humanly possible. I think when I finally had given you that script, I rushed it at the end, I felt like, but it came out so much better later on. Which was so cool of you to like look at it and give me notes on it, because I took all those into account and changed everything. But it ended up being just a way, way, way better film than I had submitted initially, because I changed so many things, and you pointed me in the right direction on a lot of stuff that I'm glad that you gave me notes on, because it trended out to be so much better for the film.
So 11 days. Was it a 90-page script?
It was like 72.
72? Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So
But like
you were.
the first cut of the film was like an hour 47. So like, you would think like a minute a page is what you always hear, but it's not always what trends out. Like some of your actors will be very long-winded, or you just never know. Sometimes they'll improvise a little bit and it's too good to get rid of. But I gave the cut to somebody else to refine, to polish off.
Okay,
much better.
So you did the assembly, the rough assembly yourself?
Yes, yep. I did the rough cut myself, and I think it's good. I'm just so close to it that you just don't know if it's good or not. You just want to put the story elements in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather somebody else who's not as close to the project make those decisions. The guy I gave it to, Matt Niehoff, is amazing. He owns a multi-million-dollar studio here, and he's a hell of an editor. He's just the best at what he does here. Kentucky's small, but he's very well known. And he's just going to do a much better job than I could ever do. So I thought that was important to give it to somebody who just has, they've not seen it before, they don't know much about it, and see what he does with it. So he'll have a cut for me this Friday to check out.
Wow, that's super awesome. That's great. And then you've got your like audio mix and all that Foley, all that stuff's lined up for you once you're finished with your video edit. Yeah,
I got. There's a guy named Hugo Diaz who's he's won 3 Grammys. He used to be Pitbull's producer. He's a musician, but he's going to do all my post audio, which is amazing. And then I've got 2 composers who are working on the film as well. So that it's going to be fun, because it's going to be an 80s kind of score, and it's Joe Stockton and Sam Elliott. And Joe sent me some temp tracks of stuff that he's done. It's just blew me away. I'm a huge fan of like Disaster Piece. They did the It Follows soundtrack, and it's like right up the alley. So yeah, man, I'm super pumped about it, man. It's just when you're doing a micro budget, you have to exhaust all of your resources, and I knew that for a long time. Like I never asked anybody for anything for the last 10 years, and I was just saving it up, for this time. And a really good friend of mine, well now he's a friend, but he used to be my idol. His name is Lloyd Kaufman, and he owns Troma. And he's very well known. He's been in the industry for I think 42 years now. Troma's been running the longest independent film company in history. He directed Toxic Avenger. He shot Rocky. Like he's amazing. So basically he had started to mentor me over the last 2 years or so. I'd call him, or I'd be able to email him, or I just follow like his podcast and stuff too. But he said, he gave me some really good advice, and he said, you're acting like you're slaying a dragon. Like, if you make that film, I'll be in your film. And I'm like, really? So like he was gonna make a cameo in my film. So I'm like, you're kidding. So Lloyd Kaufman's in my film. And he's in
Whoa.
Guardians of the Galaxy, which is so cool. But so basically, Lloyd's in my film, and he gave me the best piece of advice ever. He said, "This is just a film. Yes, it's your first film, but it's not your last film. It's just a film." He's like, "Don't act like this is your last one, man. Why are you treating it like it's your last one?" And that was like the single piece of advice that carried me along through the entire process. I mean, not to mention, like, if Lloyd says he's going to be in my film, like, I'm going to make the film. But that piece of advice was so important because I think that most filmmakers in this situation are listening to all of the podcasts that are in existence, like me, reading any literature that's available to them, and they just never do it. Like they're never going to be ready because they're never going to feel like they're ready. They're going to be like, oh, well, if I just had the Red Epic, then surely then I'll be ready. Well, now the Red Epic's old. Now that I can afford it, it's too old. So if I just had the Alexa Mini, surely then I'm going to do this movie. And it's always going to be something. But you just got to do it, man. And through the group's encouragement, your encouragement, and Lloyd's, he's said some pretty profound things. Most of the things that he says is pretty profound. And he was almost like mad at me. He's like, "This is just your first film. It's not your last film. Just hit it." And I did. So yeah, I think that was very important.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do you have in mind a date when you want to have it done?
Yeah, I was hoping to have it done in October, so I'm gonna have to have it done before then because I don't think I personally don't know if it's a Sundance worthy film, but my producer, I have a producer named Gil Holland, who is he's like a Sundance darling. He's had probably 100 movies premiere there, and he's produced hundreds of movies. But he's like the only person in history to have one win there 3 times, 3 awards. But anyhow, he wants to submit it to Sundance, and it has I won't say a hero, but well, okay, I'll say it. He's like a gay character that is a hero, so which is not really common in horror films. So stereotypically, we see gays in horror films as just fodder for the killer, or the stereotype is just it's not correct. So the stereotype for me is people from the LGBT community are they're very brave, they're very loyal, they're very strong. So that's how my character is represented in this film, and it's just a different angle, for most horror, and Gil is taking that angle, and he's going to pitch it to Sundance and some others. But that's why he doesn't want me to release the trailer. He just says there's no call to action, so we're going to pitch to a few festivals, and we'll see what happens. I don't have high hopes for it. I'm definitely probably not in that tier that's going to get in there. I don't think so, but Gil seems to think so, and he's friends with Jason Blum, so he wants to do a screening eventually with Jason Blum. But that's the game plan as of right now, and we'll see what happens. You just never know, and like when you're in this industry, you make these connections that with people that but as long as you haven't like exhausted those resources already, and if you can execute and do what you say you're going to do, then those people will have belief in you. And I think I've been very careful with that and my reputation and things like that. So now that I do have those resources, I am exhausting them now, and they did see that I did the film, I did what I said I was going to do. Then now they're willing to help me. But I think that a lot of filmmakers find that I see it all the time in a million groups, but they're frustrated because a lot of times they're not following through and doing what they're saying they're going to do. So nobody believes them. So when their message pops up on Facebook or their phone, somebody's phone rings, and it's that person who isn't coming through and doing the things that they said they're going to do, a lot of times those resources won't answer, or they won't help you. So as long as you're doing what you say you're going to do, then I think you're good.
Yeah. Now, I have a question. I'm sure a lot of people who watch this will wonder, well, how did you get all these? You have all these amazing connections, Lloyd Kaufman, big heavy hitters doing your audio and your video editing and your producer. How did you pull on those people to be your mentor, to work on your film in some way? Like, where did it come from? You obviously had to
I
build
think
up those
that's a great
networks.
question. I think you just got to reach out, and then, like I said, a lot of times, like on Facebook, for example, um, like people, they might not always comment or like your stuff, but everybody's watching. And I think that a lot of people are extremely negative on Facebook, or they treat it like a diary, but they should really be treating it like a billboard, where, or like the headline of a newspaper, because everybody's watching. And I think that, that takes into account like what people's perception are of you. And I think if people have a good perception of you, you got to remember that you can't make a first impression twice. You can only make a first impression. You got one chance at that. And contingent upon how you're introducing yourself to these people or how you're meeting these people. And everybody knows somebody who, is at a much higher level than them, but they know you too. Maybe they know you, and the way that they know you might be negative. So you've got to ensure that that they know you in a positive light, whether it's they know that you're a really hard worker, or that maybe you have a huge fan base on Facebook, or you're putting out beautiful work that they've seen before. But everybody's watching. So I think that, one, you have to, reputation is everything in this industry. So if people hear something negative about you, and negative people, the voices are much louder than positive voices, you've got to be really careful of that, and people are watching your social media. Don't think they're not checking. So keep all that stuff clean, and then reach out to people. Just give them a shot and reach out to them. And right now we live in a world where you're in Spain right now. We're talking, and I just tried. I just showed up and I tried. Like I reached out to you and I reached out to Lloyd, and then I was dying to meet Lloyd for so long that I knew a lot of people that maybe had some sort of friendship or relationship with him, and I begged them all to introduce me to him, and none of them did, man. And I even went out of my way and did huge favors for these people, so that maybe the chance that they just might introduce me to him, and they still didn't. But I didn't lose hope or anything. I didn't give up. I was like, I'm gonna go meet him. So I went to a Scarefest. It's in Cincinnati. I live in Kentucky. It's 2 hours away. Maybe it's 2.5 or something. But I just drove. I was like, I'm gonna drive and I'm gonna meet him. I'm gonna say hi at least. And I only had 2 seconds with him, and he didn't he had this huge line, and I didn't even get to meet him that time. But eventually, after trying to meet him and trying to have something worthwhile to pitch, to talk about even, then people will give you a chance, man. Same thing with investors and stuff. I think that the number one question that I get usually is how did you get money for the film? And everybody knows people who have money. It's just, what is their perception of you? You have to know what their perception is of you. And if you're asking for money, would you give you money? Would you give you money if you knew the perception of you? Mm-hmm. And but I have a couple very strategic ways that I was able to get the funding for the film that I'm happy to share if anybody's curious.
Yeah. Please do.
So sorry I had to go off on a tangent.
No, that's okay. No, this is good stuff. It's rich information.
Oh man, thank you. So the way that I got the funding for the film was actually pretty obscure, and it was just by accident, really, to be honest. So what happened was I wrote a business plan, and I do a presentation for everything that I do. So if I'm gonna meet with someone, I have a presentation prepared because I want to get my point across, but I also want to give them some literature to read after I'm gone. So I'll send them a soft copy. I'll bring them a hard copy of my presentation, and I will present that usually for whatever meeting I'm going to have. I always do that, right? So I guess it's just been embedded in me to do that. So naturally, I did a PowerPoint presentation of a business plan on how I think that I can do this film. So basically, I reached out to two people who I respect their business acumen, and I respect their opinion and their judgment more than my own. And I know they're very successful business people, but I did not ask them for money because I think if I did ask them directly, hey, can you give me money for my film? They'd probably be like, oh God, I'm not even gonna look at this presentation. They probably wouldn't even looked at it, and I wouldn't blame them. But and I think that's what people are doing. They're probably reaching out to people. Here's my business plan. Take a look at it, which is a little in your face. Instead, I did it indirectly, and I did it by mistake. But this is what happened. I sent my business plan to two people, the two people I respect the most. They're close friends, but they're my idols. They've been mentoring me for many years, and I sent them my business plan. I said, hey, you know, can you take a look at this and give me advice on it? I would really appreciate your advice if you could actually just look at it and tell me what I did wrong or what I could do better. And what happened is they looked at my business plan. And when they reached the end, they were like, "What? I can just invest this much and be involved in the film." And I'm like, "Yeah, you can just. It's not going to be a ton of money, and I mean, for some people, it's probably a ton, but yeah." So what happened is indirectly, they read my business plan. However, if I would have just asked them outright, read my business plan, they may have never done that if they knew that I was asking them for money. But instead, I just asked them for advice on it, and I sent the business plan to two people. That's it, and they funded my film. And then I did a crowdfunding campaign also just from a marketing perspective because we felt that it would help the film. But we were able to raise another $13,000 just through that, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. Amazing. Wow. Well, congrats on all that. And do you have in mind, I know you're still in the throes of post-production, but are you thinking for the future for what will be the next film and next projects and so on?
Yeah, so another group of guys who are amazing is the directors of Turbo Kid, who was a Sundance darling. It's like one of my favorite movies ever. But
yeah,
my daughter,
I've met them. We have a funny connection because their producer Anne-Marie Jalina is in Quebec.
yeah,
And I work for a company in Quebec, so I know Anne-Marie, and we've sort of tried to collaborate a few times. And then I was at a film festival in Texas, the Victoria Texas Indie Film Festival, and the directors from Turbo Kid were there because they know Anthony Padone, who runs that film festival. Small world.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, they're like the greatest guys ever, the directors of Turbo Kid, and my daughters loved Turbo Kid. I probably should have never shown them, but I fast forward through the gore, but they were like crying to have Turbo Kid on because it's my favorite movie too, and it's just ironic. So became friends with the directors of Turbo Kid because they're freaking awesome, and I asked them what's the one piece of advice that you would give me, making my first feature, and they said, definitely have your second thing ready because as soon as this thing comes out, you're going to want to have because they said the number one question they got when they released Turbo Kid was, what's next? And they were like, Turbo Kid 2? And they were like, have you written it yet? And they were like, no, we haven't written it yet, so they ended up just doing the summer of '84, but they didn't write that one. Mm-hmm. So they just directed that one, RKSS. But they're amazing, and that was a great piece of advice. So have your next thing ready, when your film rolls out. So I'm already working on the next one, and I'm going to write it in July. But it's just another horror one, and it should be fun though. I think it's going to be much different than One Must Fall because One Must Fall is actually like a horror comedy, and well, it's really weird. It's a horror comedy in the beginning, but then it turns into just very serious, very much horror. Because I wanted the contrast of the very stark contrast of when it turns over to horror, then it's a very serious film. It would be much more jarring in a slow build. I felt if I just had comedy and horror, then you would have that comparison.
Yeah.
Without that, it would just be this slow build. So anyways, the new one it'll be strictly horror, but a lot more fast paced and straight laced than One Must Fall. But yeah, I'm working on that, and I should have. Hopefully in July I'll have that written. So what happened was this time when I wrote One Must Fall, my wife, it was I can't remember what month it was, but she was like, I'm my dad full time, so in order to shut down my brain and be creative just on one project, the kids will have to be out of the house and stuff, or I'll have to be out of the house, and I couldn't find that that creativity. Mm-hmm. So basically my wife took the kids to Florida. And she was for a week. She's like, I'm gonna take the kids to Florida for a week. You write your film. So that's when
awesome.
I signed up here and wrote the film. But yeah, so that was the foundation of it. So I'm gonna do the same thing this year. She's gonna take the kids to Florida, and I'm gonna write a new movie. I've already got all the I've already conceptualized it and kind of written it out how I want it. But we'll see how it goes. I might need your help.
Yeah. Give me, you know how to reach me. So I should probably let you go now, but I really appreciate you taking all this time, and it's been so awesome to get this kind of in-depth conversation and really get a sense of your process and how you got here. And congrats that you got this far so fast. It's been really
Oh,
exciting to see this. I was on Facebook, and then I saw one day your a photo of like your last shot from the movie, and I was like, what? He made the movie? How'd that happen?
yeah, thank you, man. Just very lucky, just to have great people around me and stuff, and it's really cool to watch the machine work, and just like meeting you and stuff like that, man. I never thought anything like that would be possible. Like, I don't deserve any of this, I'm just really just lucky to be here, and I value every second of it, and the days are long and stuff like that, but in every picture, everybody's frowning, tired, but I'm smiling, man. Just lucky to be here at all, and if somebody were to ask me, like what my dream is, I would tell you that I'm living my dream right now. And even if I lost my house, I lost my car, I lost everything, I'd still be living my dream. And I'm very lucky, for that. So thank you for enabling me to do what I love to do. It means everything. So thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Well, keep us posted, or keep me posted anyway when the teaser is ready to go, because I'd love to share that with everybody. And as your launch day approaches for the movie, definitely keep in contact so I can let the community know what's going on, and they can follow this amazing journey that you're on, which is very exciting.
Well, thank you so much. If I can help in any way, or help any of your followers, or anybody that needs me, I'm happy to assist on behalf of you, because you've done so much for me that I would be honored to pay that forward. So if I can help in any way, I'd love that chance. So just give me a shot, and I'll help you any way I can. But
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, good luck, Antonio.
See you soon, man. Thank you.
Talk soon.